everyone. I'm Mark Musey, speaking with my friend and colleague, Manoj Jain. And we're talking, of course, about meditation. We've been discussing two of the three categories of meditation. We've looked at focused attention and open monitoring. And now we're going to begin a conversation about self-transcendent meditation. And Manoj, I think for many of our listeners, the concept of self-transcendence is probably not a self-evident idea, maybe not even a term that they're familiar with. So perhaps we can begin simply by asking you to elaborate on what we mean when we talk about self-transcendence.
Yeah, it's very hard to understand and explain self-transcendence, but we can do that. And let me sort of unwrap it little by little. Self-transcendence means going beyond. And when we say going beyond, beyond what? It's going beyond our day-to-day thoughts. It's our ability to go beyond our thoughts and to explore the vastness of our consciousness. And so it's a term that has been experienced by many. People say that we can't even explain it, that we have to experience it. And so that is a beginning of the terminology for better understanding. In fact, many of the ancient masters have experienced this. Mark, do you want to talk a little bit about what the masters and the sages from the East and the West experienced in these stages?
Well, I can report, not from personal experience necessarily, but from the things that I know about other religious traditions, that when individuals talk about the experience of self-transcendence, they describe it in innumerable ways. Many speak of feeling a deep connectedness to the universe. Yeah. Some, even in the Upanishads of the Hindu tradition, will talk about feeling one with the universe, or one even with ultimate reality. In other traditions, particularly the more mystical or esoteric traditions, and this you'll find in both East and Western religious traditions, there's a sense of mysticism or deep connectedness with what they might call God. Other individuals report feeling out of their body, as if their soul has somehow lifted up and lost its constraints within the physical being. So self-transcendence is an experience that has been described in the literature in many, many different ways.
Right.
But I think all of what these ideas have in common is that this sense that we are a limited ego has been relinquished. Most of us experience ourselves as somehow bounded, usually by our bodies, oftentimes by our minds, but we are small people in a very vast world. And the experience of self-transcendence, as I understand it, means that those boundaries are often relaxed, and,
Sure.
and we have a sense of enlargement, if you will.
And what is important to remember is that self-transcendence doesn't need to mean a spiritual experience. It doesn't have to be a spiritual experience or experiencing God type of experience. It's an experience where one is able to go beyond. Right? It's one able to experience consciousness at a different level. And I think that's very important, because in many ways we are often caught up in the day-to-day, and when we are experiencing meditation, we're in a different state of mind at times. And biologically, when we look at the brain scanning, what we notice is that during this time the temporal spatial relationships are lost, that we sort of forget where we are and what time we're in. Yet we're completely attentive and aware. It's sort of paradoxical.
And it also provides kind of a scientific explanation for what's described in more theological or religious terms as a mystical kind of experience. So if we've lost our sense of spatial temporal relationships, then it would make a lot of sense that we might interpret that experience as being connected or having a sense of unity, or even a loss of one's connectedness to one's body.
Yeah, and like we've talked about, all of the various traditions with meditation techniques and traditions have some element of one or two types of these meditation practices that we've categorized. The self-transcendence resembles very similar to the TM type of meditation. And that's what we sort of talk about, is how one can use these practices in their day-to-day life and to improve on what they're doing. And they don't need to learn the Zen meditation or Vipassana meditation or TM meditation, but take the core elements of these practices and incorporate them in their lives.
Earlier, we talked about focused attention and open monitoring, and we even discussed how in certain situations it's desirable to practice a particular form of meditation. Is that also the case with self-transcendence?
Well, self-transcendence is very helpful for times when one is looking for academic excellence. We notice that type of meditation seems to work well as well. Even our physical wellness, we notice that a lot of the studies, but these are all preliminary studies, and we can't lump one with the other. But what we're noticing is that one type of meditation may help one type of way of well-being.
We talk about self-transcendence as a relinquishment kind of meditation. We've got various words that we associate with these more scientific terms, like we call focused attention, anchoring, and we call open monitoring, surveying, and now we talk about self-transcendence as relinquishment. Exactly what are we relinquishing?
Yeah. So we're relinquishing our thoughts. In fact, one of the concerns is that when we're practicing self-transcendence meditation, are we pushing away our thoughts? And it's really not pushing. It's just allowing them to dwindle, to sort of go away slowly. It's not a push-pull, but rather let them subside. And to experience those few moments when our minds are without thoughts.
One of the things I've always observed is that many people think that meditation is an effort at trying to blank the mind, trying to clear the mind of thoughts, as if we could somehow force ourselves to do it. Now, my own experience tells me that no matter how much I try, I can't get rid of thoughts, but I can let them go. And what I mean by that is the thoughts will arise, and if I acknowledge them, I can relinquish them. But what we're saying is that in self-transcendence, it's not a matter of trying to eliminate thinking. We're not trying to do that. In fact, that would probably be counterproductive. But rather, we're trying to let go of these thoughts as they arise.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's great. So this is going to conclude our conversation about 3 different types of meditation. When we return, we're going to begin our conversations about the transformations that these different forms of meditations will bring about. So we look forward to seeing you then.